For over 1,000 years, the Greek world wrote its books in one way. Scribes used a script we call majuscule. It was a formal hand. Every letter was a capital. Each was formed separately. They stood upright, like carved letters. That was the feeling of a majuscule page. This script was clear and monumental. It had a certain dignity, but it had enormous drawbacks. Writing in majuscule was slow and deliberate. A scribe had to lift his pen after almost every stroke. It was more like drawing than writing. That made copying text very long and laborious. The materials themselves were another problem. Books were written on parchment or vellum. The new script did not appear overnight. It evolved from the less formal writing used for letters. It evolved from the less formal writing used for documents. This was a cursive, faster hand. Scribes began to adapt these quicker, more rounded forms for book writing. By the early 9th century, we see the first true examples of this new style. We call it minuscule. The word simply means small letter, as opposed to the large letter of majuscule. The change began to take hold in the intellectual heart of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. The court was a major center of learning. The church was a major center of learning. They had a constant need for new copies of texts, legal documents. They had a constant need for new copies of texts, religious works. The key period for this transformation was about 800–850 AD. One of the earliest dated manuscripts in this script is the Ouspensky Gospels. It was copied in the year 835. Its pages show a neat, readable, and compact script. This manuscript proves minuscule was already a fully developed, elegant system. The visual difference between majuscule and minuscule is stark. Minuscule script looks much more like modern handwriting. The letters are based on a 4-line system, not 2. Ascenders extend above the main line. Descenders extend below the main line. Think of the letter B. Think of the letter P. This gives words a more distinctive and varied shape. It makes them easier for the eye to recognize. The old majuscule script, by contrast, kept all letters between 2 lines, making the text look like a solid, uniform block. Another key feature was the introduction of ligatures. These are strokes that connect 2 or more letters into a single unit. Example, ST. Example, ON. Scribes could form these with one continuous movement of the pen, which dramatically increased writing speed. The script also became more systematic in its use of accents and breathing marks. The most immediate and profound impact of minuscule script was on the production of books. The practical benefits were threefold. Speed space savings. The increase in writing speed was transformative. A scribe using minuscule could copy a text in a fraction of the time it took using majuscule. The flowing connected letters meant the pen stayed on the page longer, moving continuously rather than forming each letter with separate, deliberate strokes. This meant a single scribe could produce more books in a year. A scriptorium with several scribes could dramatically increase its output. This was a revolution in productivity, centuries before the printing press. The second benefit was the efficient use of space. Minuscule letters were inherently smaller and could be written more compactly. This allowed a scribe to fit significantly more text onto a single page of expensive parchment. Historians have estimated that minuscule could save up to a third of the page space compared to majuscule. This had a direct economic consequence. Fewer pages meant less parchment was needed for each book. Books became cheaper to make and therefore cheaper to buy. The development of minuscule script came at a critical moment in history. By the 9th century, many works of ancient Greek literature, science, philosophy existed only in a few old copies. These books, written on fragile papyrus aging parchment, were in danger of being lost forever. They were written in the old, difficult majuscule script. There was an urgent need to transfer their contents into a more permanent and accessible format. Minuscule provided the perfect tool for this massive undertaking. It was fast and economical enough to make a large-scale project of recopying possible. This effort is sometimes called the Macedonian Renaissance, a period of intense cultural and intellectual activity. During the 9th and 10th centuries, Byzantine scholar-scribes began a systematic effort to transcribe ancient texts from majuscule into the new minuscule hand, and produce a new, clean version in minuscule. The success of minuscule script depended on its widespread adoption. The change began in the capital, Constantinople, but quickly spread across the Byzantine world. The imperial court, the Patriarchate, the head of the church, set the standard. They sponsored scriptoriums and commissioned high-quality minuscule copies. This official patronage gave the new script prestige and authority. Scribes trained in the capital then traveled to other cities and monasteries. Monasteries were the engines of this diffusion. They were self-contained communities with resources and educated manpower for large-scale copying. Education played a crucial role. Minuscule became the standard book hand taught in schools. It became the all-purpose script of a literate society, formal and elegant or rapid and functional. The impact of Byzantine minuscule did not end with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. In the decades before and after the city's conquest by the Ottoman Turks, many Byzantine scholars fled to the west. They brought with them their most precious possessions, their books. These manuscripts, almost all written in minuscule script, arrived in Italy at the perfect moment. The Italian Renaissance was in full swing. There was a fervent desire among Italian humanists to learn Greek and to read the classical authors in their original language. The Byzantine manuscripts were the key they had been searching for. When the first printers, like Aldus Manutius in Venice, wanted to create typefaces for printing Greek books, they looked to these manuscripts for their models. The lowercase Greek letters used in printing today are direct descendants of the handwriting of 15th century Byzantine scribes. The cursive forms, the ligatures, the overall shape of the letters. In this way, the script developed in a Constantinople monastery in the 9th century, made its way onto the printed pages of Renaissance Europe, and eventually onto our computer screens today. The legacy of minuscule is therefore twofold. Well, that's the remarkable story.